Hello and welcome to the video for ICSR 520 on writing a literature review. So this is just a short presentation just to get you thinking about how to write literature reviews, which is a very common thing to do in research, and it's the beginning of every research paper. So for your final paper, where you'll be writing an individual research proposal, the first part of it is in fact a literature review. So we're going to go through that. So the first thing you need to keep in mind, we're going to go through these in more depth, is how to choose a topic, then how to read general articles, formulating a temporary thesis or issue statement, preparing a temporary outline, searching for relevant references, and then preparing a preliminary list of references. And I'm giving you some tools to do that, so hopefully that will make it a little easier. You'll also be taking notes from relevant sources as you go, preparing your notes to avoid plagiarism, biggie there. Revise your working outline, writing a draft, revising text, filling in references, and then putting your paper in final form for turning it in or for submission if that's what you want to do with your eventual research work, or that's something that you end up doing when you submit your work for publication. It needs to be in a very, very stringent final form. So when it comes to choosing a topic, there's a lot of things to think about. You can think about your assignment, so the individual research proposal, it should fit that. It should fit the program that you're in. It should fit your career aspirations, whatever your interests are, the practicality of what's possible for you, all kinds of things. Try and think of all those things. The topic should be something that you can continue working on and be interested in. It shouldn't be something that's just a flash in the pan that you'll never think of again. At the same time, it needs to not be your magnum opus. There is no such thing as the one paper to rule them all for the rest of your life. You should be continually working to improve what you're doing, improve your methods, improve your writing, and add to the work that you've already done. So there may be a paper someday that everyone thinks is the best thing you've ever written, but the next one after that should be the next one in line. So don't put too much weight on any given assignment or any given paper that you're writing. Considering your goals in the long term, that's an important thing. If you are planning to do the thesis in this master's program, then think of the individual research proposal as a first stab at coming up with a topic for that and getting some background work under your belt and thinking about how you might research that. If not, well then maybe it's something that you can use for another purpose. Also, if you're planning on pursuing a PhD after this, it's always great to have a paper that you can submit of your work that shows them that you know how to write in a in a more rigid academic style. So, all good things. As you're choosing your topic, you will absolutely, if you pick one topic and it's dead on right off the bat, you're amazing. Not to say you aren't amazing anyway. Of course you're amazing, but you're probably going to need to narrow it, expand it, elaborate on it. The topic's probably going to change. So that's a good thing, though. That means you're learning as you go. So you'll choose a topic, you'll look at background materials, and it's quite possible that you'll find something really interesting as you go along that will modify it or even replace it. Hopefully modify it. So first thing you're going to do is you're going to read general articles. You're going to do an article search, and your article matrix has information on doing an article search using the library's resources. Please don't just go straight to Google Scholar. Often when you look in Google Scholar, a lot of the things you don't have access to, and reading abstracts alone is not enough. So try and find stuff through the library. You can also use Google Scholar if you want, but remember that if you don't have access to it there, you're going to have to pay for it via interlibrary loan or something else like that. So start off with stuff that you know you can get. But you start off by looking at topics that really look at the main issue that you're interested in. Say if you're interested in homelessness, well, you can go in and search for homelessness, or if you're interested in homelessness as it relates to families, or as it relates to veterans, or as it relates to, the more things you can add on, you're going to take it down from thousands and thousands of articles down to maybe 100 or 50 or something that's a little more manageable to sort through. If you're in the hundreds or above, then you want to be more stringent. If you only find 3, well, write them down, but you might need to be more broad. Or you might just need to use different search terms altogether. So try to use a few different ones. And then once you find a paper, sometimes they'll have keywords listed, especially when you're searching online. Use those keywords to try and find more articles, because it's possible there's some sort of technical term that you're not aware of. So think through that. Main thing you want to look at is recent articles, journal articles, peer-reviewed journal articles. That's the main thing. After that, there's chapters, books, good websites, etc. Those are okay, but you want to start out with those journal articles first and foremost. Use your skills to critically evaluate the general resources and find those you think are reliable. So we'll talk a little bit more about that later, and you have an example that I sent out to you that I want you all to look at, and we'll talk about that after you've all had a chance to look at it. Formulate a temporary thesis. So you either have a research question or a statement that you're making, and you want it to be very brief. 1 or 2 statements that really express what you plan to do. What is your topic, boiled all the way down? It's a statement of the aim, the goal, and the main idea of your paper. It's a quote from Cash. I wish it was Johnny Cash, but it isn't. Although you might be having some sort of thesis prison blues after writing this. Prepare a temporary outline. An outline is essential. They're an amazing tool for getting your thoughts ironed out in a way that you can go back to them and look at them. I have a specific writing style that uses outlines, and I think it works very well. And the first thing you have to do is come up with an organizational strategy. So, should it be chronological? Should it be kind of looking at things historically from earliest to more recent? Should it be comparison and contrast? Are you going to take 2 things and compare them to each other? Topical, just looking at one topic and supporting ideas regardless of when the articles came out or that sort of thing. Or problem solution, are you going to try and show a problem, which you could even do historically, and then the solution could be done as more of a topical approach. Doesn't matter, whatever makes the most sense for what you have. And one of the great things about an outline is that once you get the outline together with your major ideas, then you can take your sources and little snippets from each different source, and you can plug it in Microsoft Word or OpenOffice or whatever you're using as a word processor, and you start to fill out your paper that way, and then everything's already organized. So, when you are looking at your outline, you need to basically start out with your sections. So you have your thesis, your issue, then you have your supporting points for your thesis, then you have your main point that supports your supporting point, and then main point number 2. You just want to make it essentially like a pyramid. So at the peak of the pyramid is your thesis statement, and everything under that supports it one way or another. You should be able to draw a line from every statement in your paper all the way up to your thesis that you've made, or your research question. Should be first and foremost. Then once you've written all that, then you come to some kind of conclusion based on all of this. And that conclusion should be something like there's a gap in the literature, there's a specific direction that people need to go in as far as research or action or whatever. That conclusion should be leading you right at research. So you've gone through all of these things and you're looking at homelessness among families. Maybe the conclusion that you come to is that after looking at the literature, homelessness with families is, it's rampant, especially because now homelessness is often caused by financial stress instead of by mental illness or something like that. And that when these families are put into homes, they very quickly get back on their feet and get back into kind of normal society and are able to have lives more like they want to have. So the next question would be, well, how do you do that? Or how would you do that locally, or something like that? It should point you at something else, some kind of action or further research. And that's where an individual research proposal should go. Keep in mind, well, first of all, you need to make sure that your references are straight throughout this. You want to make sure that every single time you support a point, that it should be done, hopefully, with research literature, and at the very least with clear logic, not emotional appeals. Emotional appeals are really easy to trash when people are looking at an argument. Yes, you want to grab people and get them connected to your topic in as many ways as possible, but since this is an academic world that we're writing within right now, you need to make sure that everything is supported with evidence as much as possible. The next thing is to realize that it's an iterative process. As you're searching for references, you're going to learn new things. You're going to put those things into your paper. You might be reorganizing. You might be rewriting here and there. Let it be a living document that you keep going back into. That's one of the great things about computers, is that you can go back in and switch things around and change things up. It's a wonderful thing, so take advantage of that. So when you're searching for relevant references, you need to use library sources. There are journal databases, and those are your best friends. There's electronic books, and then there's those bound paper thingies you can go in and look at, which include journals and books. But anyway, the main thing you're going to be looking at are journal databases. Journal databases are a very important thing. There's JSTOR, that's JSTOR. There's PsycInfo, there's sociological abstracts, there's yearly reviews, there's all kinds of stuff like that. You're going to be able to find those when you go and look and you follow the directions in the article matrix assignment. Use those. They're very powerful search databases, and they're going to give you exactly what you want. If you don't find it, that means you need to look in a different way. So feel free to ask for help on that, but keep trying and see what you can do on your own. When you're looking at, when you're doing searches on the internet, make sure that you are keeping very, very good track of where you found it, who the authors are, the date that you found it, and the date that it was published. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about Zotero very briefly, and that's one of the best ways to keep track of that, because it's going to do it all for you and you don't even have to remember. So that's a good thing. You can use other sources with which you are familiar. So if you come from a background in sociology where almost everything was done in book form in particular, well, that's totally fine. Some branches of sociology are really into that, and they only do things as books. Great, sounds good. There are some really great books out there, but you have to know how to look through them, because there's also a bunch of books that are no better than, or only slightly better than novels. So you need to know how to look through them. Evaluate each source. You need to make sure that the source itself is a good one. So what kind of journal is it? What kind of article is it within that journal? All of those things need to be taken into account. Be absolutely sure that you're looking at those journal articles first. That's first. Everything else is icing on the cake, or what you do when there are no journal articles. Journal articles go through the peer review process and are more reliable, not 100% reliable, but are more reliable than any other source. So after that, then look at edited chapters or academic books, then solid web resources. And solid web resources include government agencies, academic research centers, etc., that kind of thing. Not topical websites, clearinghouses of information on particular topics. Sometimes they're reliable, sometimes they aren't. You never know. And often, if you find something on a web source, if it's not authored, then avoid it. If it is authored, look that person up. It's quite possible that they have a published paper on it. And if they don't, you might want to worry about that. So think that through as best as possible. Obviously, emphasize the recent ones unless you're looking at something historically. So, and then you'll want to look at everything. But if you want to look at how homelessness was viewed in the 1980s, you don't necessarily need to look at a recent article about historically how things were viewed. Instead, you could look at articles in the 1980s about homelessness, and they would show you pretty clearly how people saw homelessness as an issue then. So that's okay, but otherwise you want to look at recent stuff. Then include other sources as relevant. So if you're looking at media representation, it's okay to look at newspapers and television, but those are not solid sources for evidence otherwise. You can look at things like speeches. How are people talking about certain things? It really depends on your topic as to what's going to be most relevant. Just remember, just because someone says it doesn't mean it's true. So, continue your preliminary list of references using the literature matrix. That's a good way to kind of keep track of the quality of what these things are and how they interact with each other. And you want to make sure that you're making this reference list in a spreadsheet, or you can do it in a word processor, whatever makes you happy, just as long as it's something that you can interact with well. Add to it as you go. You can drop things that are lower quality if you find better stuff, whatever. It's just a good thing to have to go back to. Please use Zotero. Go now. Zotero.org, very important. I'll show you what it looks like in a sec. It's just indispensable. Take notes from relevant sources as you go along, if you can. Don't do it all later on down the road. Don't read something and think, ooh, that's a great idea, and then set it aside and go back to it later. Write down what the good idea is so you know what you're looking at next time you go back to that source. use whatever you're comfortable with. You can add notes in Zotero. You can make note cards for every single source if that's what you're comfortable with. You can use a word processor and you can make notes within that. You can use a spreadsheet, which works really well and as far as organizing is concerned, but it's a little harder to read. Record relevant information related to your temporary outline as you go so that you know what you have, so that you can very easily go back and see what support you have for what point and where you need more. Prepare your notes to avoid plagiarism. There are plenty of times when people plagiarize accidentally, and they do it because they write down something that's a paraphrase, and and then they go back and look at it later and think that maybe it was just an idea that they had. So mark very clearly if something is a paraphrase, and then keep your reflections and ideas separate. When I'm taking notes, I actually put me, colon, and then my idea, and I put that in brackets so that I know that's my take on whatever they've said. So I can introduce their idea and then say what I thought of it later without having to reread and rethink the entire thing. If you write down direct quotes, put quotation marks around them immediately and the page number so that you remember their exact quotes and so you don't accidentally put paraphrases down as quotes or vice versa. Just keep it clear ahead of time and then you don't have to worry about it later. Revise your working outline as you go. So, as you read and process additional references, you may need to revise your thesis. Your whole research question may change. The main points that you support it with may change as well. Your preliminary conclusions, those might change too. It might be that after a while you read more articles about families and homelessness and realize that people already have some really great ideas, and so you don't need to come up with an idea for dealing with the issue. You need to come up with a way of applying it just at the local level. Well, that would be a great way to revise your conclusions so you know what to do next. Have you found a guiding theory in the literature? Is there some common thread that goes through all of the sources that you have? Are there maybe two different ways of looking at an issue and you want to compare them with each other? You know, like I recall looking at organizational literature, and there were these two main kind of competing theories. One of them were these based on Max Weber's theories of how organizations function and how they follow their missions, and then another had to do with organizational ecology and thinking of them, you know, like a system within nature, and it really changed the way that you looked at things. And so it's really good for me when I'm writing about organizations to kind of to take those two and separate them from each other and say, this is how one group of people would look at it, and this is how another group would look at it. You can't just mix and match them necessarily without at least showing that you have some understanding of both. Those kinds of things happen. Make sure that you get it if there's some kind of common thread going between all of these. It's an important thing to do. Be sure to keep up with your references in your working outline. You don't just want to have a bunch of references all over the place, all over your desk or all over your desktop or whatever. You want to make sure that these are adding into your working draft as you go. Then you write your first actual draft. Go back to your thesis, make sure it's as specific as possible, and that all of your material really is supporting it, that they're in a good relationship with each other. Be sure that each subtopic or part of the outline is directly related to the thesis. If you've modified them over time, just go back and kind of clean it up and make sure they all work with each other. And then make sure that your items are logically organized. Each major section coherently relates to the previous. You want them to flow from one to the next all the way through. Revise it. So once you've gone through and you've kind of fleshed out everything, you've got it all so that it relates well together, just read it through. Does it seem clear? Does it flow logically? Does it seem complete? Is there one section that takes up 6 pages and one section that takes up 1 page, and you consider them equal in how important they are? Well, that's something you need to look at to try and maybe shorten one and lengthen the other. Do you need more references in that shorter section? Do you need to structure it differently? Do you need to maybe it is that there is so much support for one thing that it is more important and you need to change the way you talk about it? That's all fine, just make sure that it's all logical. After you've done the rest of the writing, that's when you go back and do an abstract, and that's when you really create your introduction. You do those after you've completed the first draft, the body of the first draft, because how do you know what to introduce until you know what you're talking about? The abstract is really the whole punchline. It's the punchline for the entire paper, so you want it to have all the most important bits, and if you don't know what those important bits are, well, you can't exactly write about them. An abstract is reserved for longer papers where it'd be really hard to read them otherwise. So anything that's like 5 pages or more, generally you probably want to write an abstract, but it's always good to ask. Anyway, anytime you submit a paper, you're going to have to write an abstract for it.
Make sure that your revision includes feedback that you've received. This can be from the Writing Center, this can be from peers, this can be from me, this can be from whoever. The point is, you need to get feedback. It is utterly important that you get feedback because your paper is only going to improve. It's built into the scientific process, and it has nothing to do with you being a good writer, a bad writer, anything else. All that it has to do with is you becoming a better writer, no matter where you're starting from. Every writer does well with feedback. Then fill in your references. Make sure that each of your main points are documented with references from reliable sources. Any supporting point that you make without a reference citation is a throwaway. It just doesn't count. So if you don't have a citation with it, you may as well cross it out. Then use consistent style in text and in reference section. Make sure that your references are parallel. So you're using APA style in your citations and in your references. When I say parallel, what I mean is every citation in the text should be in the reference list. Everything in the reference list should be cited. You do not put anything that was consulted but not used. Why would you consult it and not use it? That must mean it wasn't important. You just don't use it. A bibliography is a completely different creature. A bibliography is essentially all the relevant sources on a topic. It's very long and very complete. You are never going to write a bibliography for an APA style paper. It's just not how it works. You write references. It's what you reference. If you have used quotes, be sure you have the correct page number cited. Only use the page number for quotations, that's all. Put your paper in final form. APA style for this class. It says preferable there, but that's not true. It's required. Follow instructions on page length and style. That could be for a submitted paper or whatever. Proofread your paper finally before turning it in. Check spelling and grammar. Check for bad page breaks or orphans, like a heading that's at the end of a page when the section is after. And just think about how it looks. Use page breaks, please. Page breaks are something you use, say, if you write the abstract, then you insert a page break and then it starts the new page instead of hitting enter a bunch of times, because when you reformat one thing, it'll mess that up. Have someone else proofread your paper, and then revise accordingly. So, if you look at the sample lit review outline, you have your title page, and make sure that it's an APA style title page. I know it looks great when you have some giant title that's a 44 instead of 12 and looks bold and beautiful and maybe has a blue line under it or something, but skip all that. Sorry, but this is no nonsense, so you don't get to have anything that looks pretty, fortunately. This is why we can't have pretty things. Then your abstract on the next page. It's look up APA guidelines for an abstract, but it needs to be generally 250 words or less, I believe. Just a short set of punchlines for what's going on. The introduction, the title should be the same as the paper. So you'll have your title on your title page, and then at the beginning of the introduction, you put that same title. You don't actually write introduction. Then you introduce the main points. Then you go into your body. Then you have support, evidence, conclusions, references, etc. I think I do this again, yeah. So this is your APA style headings. Headings are very important. So you have your abstract, and it says abstract, it's centered, bold, 12-point. Introduction, same thing. It'll be your title instead of saying introduction. Centered, bold, capitalize every word, every major word. Body, same thing. Then when you go into your body, or directly after an introduction for shorter pages, shorter papers, then you do flush left. So all the way along the left side, flat, no tab, no indent. You have the title for your supporting idea. Supporting idea 1, I'm calling this one. This is called level 2. Level 1 is centered and bold, all words capitalized, all major words capitalized. Then level 2 is bold, left justified, all major words capitalized as well. And this should be something, some very descriptive title for the subsection. And then after that, if you have subsections to that, so if, say, I wanted to talk about homelessness in families, then I want to talk about the history of homelessness, then maybe this would be history of families in homelessness. So I would have this indented, see, indented, period, and then space, and then I would start the paragraph right after that. Then if I even had more subsections, then I would indent them just once. This is in kind of an outline format. So I'm not sure why it shifted over like that. But anyway, just be indented just like above, except it would be italicized instead of bold. And, oh, actually, I think it's supposed to be bold italicized. Oh, and then period, and then more. You really shouldn't be going down to this level for a paper of the length that you're doing now. But anyway, you can look that up on Purdue OWL, and that's a great place for that kind of thing. Anyway, and then you would have your supporting idea too, and then you have evidence for that, etc. Conclusion back to level 1. References are level 1, and it should be called references, not sources, not works consulted, not bibliography, just references on a separate page. And that is that. So, Zotero, www.zotero.org, Zotero. So, this is Zotero. It's free. You download it very quickly, and once you have it, you get a little icon, which mine isn't showing right now, but if it is, at least on Chrome, you just have a little Zotero icon there, and you can click it when you're looking at a source, and it'll collect all the information for you. Look it up. You can see information on it here. Oh, see, there's a little thing. That's what it looks like. I should have turned mine on before doing this. Anyway, it's really easy to deal with. You can do tons of stuff. You can do really simple things and just collect your sources, or you can go crazy with it and use it to do all kinds of really powerful things. Either way, it's your friend. So check it out. Good, good. Next, this week you're going to be looking at this article. This is an article called Predictors of Homelessness Among Families in New York City, From Shelter Request to Housing Stability. This is an article that you can read, certainly. It's an interesting article, but the main thing that you're doing is you're going to be critiquing it as a source. So what I want you to do for your video post is try to notice anything important about this source that will let you know its quality. What do you look at? Everything you need to know is easily accessible as far as whether this is going to be a good source or a bad source or a mediocre source or whatever. So look at all the information and tell me. You do not need to tell me whether the quality of description in this table on page blah, 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 blah is worthwhile. No. Very simple. Very simple things, very simple bits of information that you can find very quickly. In fact, you can do it all from page 1. What's going on page 1? What can you learn from it? And where else would you look? So this is a little bit open, but I want you to think through this very clearly and tell me where you go from there. So that's where one of your questions is going to be really based on is what can you get out of this. Anyway, that's all we have for this particular video. Good luck, and I'll be talking to you all again soon.